Huzzah. Okay. So let's see. Okay. It's telling me that I'm back. I'm trying to get on to YouTube again. Okay. So I'm going to send a new link to the channel. Boom. All right. All right. Hooray! That was a long one. That was a big one, but we're back. And I just okay. So folks who are logging back on, sorry about that. Could you imagine they raised our price too for that? So you know, I would. So I'm going to keep chugging along, but please let me know what the last thing you saw was, and I can go backfill. So what I was finishing up there was saying that, like, if you're doing an event, have a trailer handy, or even better yet, have it like be able to run in demo mode. Like, you know, if nobody plays your game for X number of minutes, the game defaults to like going to a scene where it just plays your trailer. The point being, motion on the screen allows people, it's more interesting, it makes your booth more lively, and people will sit down. If it is just your title screen, that is static. Even if you have something moving, it is static. It's not as exciting as gameplay or video. So you want video and something cool to look at as people walk by. If a space is not being used. So, almost there. Running a booth. I have not forgotten you if you are interested in tabletop games. Let's talk about tabletop. You want 1 or 2 copies of your game, whichever is in your ability to manage. I've run about 2 before. And this is the nice thing about tabletop games is, like, once people kind of get into it, and you put your rule book on the table or something, you can like kind of walk around and come and go and sort of host. But 1 or 2 copies. If it is 1 copy and you've got players for 1 copy, then don't feel shy about becoming one of those players. But these can be pretty low effort once they get rolling. So how do you run a tabletop booth? So when you run a booth for tabletop, what you're going to do is you are going to have 1 or 2 copies of your game. You're going to set up the board or the game between each session. Never, ever, ever just have the players set up the game. What you need to put it in, playable state. So if a game finishes up, you go back, you return it to that initial playable state. You do the setup. The player should never have to do the setup, because often, if you've played board games, you know that setup the first time can be as long as actually playing the game. So you want to that's like dead time. That sucks. Nobody wants to do that. And yes, they would do that when they buy your game, but let them deal with that after they've given you money. Consider choreographing each game. Now, what does that mean? Well, in my game that I was showing off a lot last year, that meant that I stacked the deck so that it's not like I would shuffle the deck and then they would get whatever was in the shuffle. No, that's not the ideal experience that shows off all the mechanics. I would say the first 8 cards need to be this card, that card, this card, that card in order. And I just stack them up. And what that would do is it would let me control the demo. It would make the game fair so that you do avoid those moments where, like, if you've ever played the game Munchkin, the example I always use is there's a monster in the game Munchkin that is level 20 Cthulhu. And when you just shuffle the deck, it's possible for you to be like, all right, let's start our new game of Munchkin. I'm excited to try this out. I've heard so much about it. First card, level 20 Cthulhu. Everybody's dead. Who's up for Ticket to Ride? You know, you that kind of makes the game not as fun. So you want to set the game up so it's like the ideal play scenario. Sometimes that's, you've set it up and like you've just invaded Austria-Hungary, you know, and here's what your mechanics are. What are you going to do now? You want to put them in some scenario that's like, you want to get to the good part. Same thing with your game level. You want to get to the good part. You know, don't have them play the, like, you know, I remember playing Monster Hunter 3, being like, I've heard so much about this Monster Hunter thing, like back when 3 was new, and being like, all right, level 1, I want to fight some of these cool monsters I saw in the opening video. Collect mushrooms. It's an intro. Okay, I'll go do it and it'll be fine. I failed it. Screw Monster Hunter forever. So I don't play Monster Hunter. And that's why. But I realize that it's much better now. And it is a good franchise. But, you know, you don't want to turn them off. So don't do that. If some games, you know, if any of this is, all of this, like, comes with the asterisk of is this possible? Sometimes, you know what, you just made a giant hardcore game, and that's fine. You know, but make sure you, like, advertise it as such. That's the, like, when somebody comes in from the warm weather and they sit down at your game and you're like, have you ever played high strategy? And they're like, no. It's like, maybe this game isn't for you. You know, sometimes, you know, just make sure it's catered to its audience. You know, you talk to the audience. Things to have at a booth. Banner. Again, within your ability to pay for it. I've seen ones where it's like dude with computer. I've seen ones where it's like deck to the nines. But when you have money, get a banner. And that banner can be, you know, 2 foot by 4 foot, vertical or horizontal. It's up to you. I like vertical. Vertical is nice because, and if you look at this shot, you can see like Soul in the back and some of these other ones that are in the back. What's that one? The card game. Vi. Like, you can see them from far away. And this is why I prefer Monster Hunter stories. Yeah. This is why, you know, you can see them from far away. So tall posters are really nice. I need to get mine for La Mancha back from a guy. I went to an event and let somebody keep it so they can be like, hey, we want to shout out to the local tabletop developers. And then a pandemic happened, and now I still don't have my La Mancha banner. You want to have a stand for said banner. Now, if you have a horizontal banner, drape it on your table. If you have a vertical banner, get a banner stand. Tables. Check to make sure the venue will give you a table. If not, go buy a cheap table. Probably the rules of, you know, where I said go buy the TV, same apply. Go to the hardware store, get a cheapo plastic table. But make sure you have a table, you know, but most venues will give you one. Just confirm. Tablecloth. Is it provided by the conference? Double check. If not, go to a party store, get yourself a, you know, cheap plastic tablecloth. Chairs on either side for the devs and players. Again, are they provided by the conference? Check. Sometimes they're not. Or sometimes that's not the booth you want to build. Most cons will do this, where it's like, here's a table, there's 2 chairs on the other side, and then, you know, if they're really nice, they'll give you 2 chairs. Great. Sometimes you only get 2 chairs. Give them to the players, unless you have a disability that you need to sit down, or request them. You know, just make sure, you know, you're covered. But, you know, it's not a bad thing to have some, like, lawn chairs. Now, some people will do something different. Well, they'll kind of, where you have the table in the front, they'll, like, turn it around to the side so that you have like the table is kind of along the side of your booth, and then you have like the backdrop. You know, some cons do a backdrop, and then so the floor space is open, and then what they'll do is they'll put like a rug and beanbags down, and then they'll make it like a little living room. So some people do that. Rug, again, rugs are, you know, brightly colored. They brighten up your booth on those concrete floors that are at conferences. Check, you know, maybe have one available, but check if with the venue. Like the SAM, Smithsonian American Art Museum, their floor is super nice, and they would not let you have a carpet. You wouldn't want one anyway. MagFest even requires one because it is that like old convention store, or not old, but like dirty convention floor. So, you know, get a cheap rug. But again, it brightens up the space. Give you that living room effect. Miscellaneous items based on your game's identity. Get creative. You know? So Jared Huntley from Cleveland Game Developers. His booth is the one that's in the foreground here. And what he has for his game Art Club Challenge is a frame with a mat. And then the frame with a mat is placed around the screen showing off his game. Because it's Art Club Challenge. It's a drawing Zen game. And he wants to promote it as this piece of art. So he has books about the artist that inspired him to make the game. He has this thing, like, so the screen looks like it's a piece of art. He has his game's info painted on canvas. You know, I've seen people bring, like, crates and washboards for their, like, you know, Ozarks inspired game. You know, all kinds of stuff. So like set dress. Don't be afraid to set dress. You know, we did that for, you know, when we had those all digital ones for Indie Maker Syndicate this past winter, like I covered my digital booth in giant evil looking vines because I was showing off kudzu. You know, you want to dress those things up. And then last thing you want is postcards or business cards of your studio or game, because people are going to want to take that, and then they will, when they get home, look at through their bag of whatever they got at the con and be like, oh yeah, that game was cool, and then like go to Steam. In theory, you want that to happen, but having a takeaway item is good for them to do that. People also really like buttons. Order buttons. Buttons are good, and again, same effect. They'll like put it on their bag and then be like, oh, that game was cool, and then buy it maybe. Last thing, and then I'll do some Q&A. Merchandising. So again, bare minimum. Get stickers, get buttons. I like Sticker Mule, but Sticker Mule is also kind of become the expensive option, and people have priced out Sticker Mule. So do your research. But, you know, find a site that, you know, maybe gives you some good... There are also local places. I haven't used them a lot. There's also another one called the 16-Bit Couple that we've been talking to about some projects, and they're super cool. So, you know, but get stickers and buttons. People like those. Like, stickers are great. And get nice, like, vinyl-y feeling stickers. That's why I like Sticker Mule. But again, like, there are other places that do those vinyl-y feeling ones. What that does is, you know, again, it gives a takeaway, and it gives, like, you know, somebody took your game character and, like, put it on their thing. I've even had students just, like, print them out from your computer. You know, do whatever is within your means. But if you have a booth, make stickers and buttons and/or buttons. Do you have plushies? Now, I've never done plushies. You know, note, I've never done plushies, but like some places will order plushies or hats. Maybe you have access to a 3D printer and you make some cool 3D printed stuff, like keychains. I had a student group do keychains one year for their final when we could do these in person, and I would have you have a booth. So some people will do 3D printed items. Sometimes, like, you know, if you don't have access to a printer, you can go to one of these websites that'll, you know, let you upload a 3D model and then order. Shirts. Maybe you print shirts. Shirts are expensive. But, you know, again, if your Kickstarter made it and you've got leftover shirts, bring some shirts. You know, get rid of them. Soundtracks. Same thing. Vinyl's expensive. But if you You know, if you get some funding or something, like, or even you just, you know, print out. If your computer still has a CD drive, get some CDs made and then put some stickers on your CDs, and then you have a nice soundtrack. Maybe you do soundtrack. Now that's a tough one because you have to work out with your composer who may distribute the soundtrack and what amount of money goes to who for the soundtrack. But let's just assume, you know, it's you that did it or a member of your team. You know, at its most base simple. Like, there are other conditions when you get into, like, you know, projects of the scale of like what I do, but, you know, these are things that I've seen people do that are within the realm of possibility. Same thing as if you do like just straight up work for hire, where you're like, yeah, I'm just hiring you to make this and then we can distribute it. You know, work that out with your composer. Or your actual game. Card with Steam code. USB with extras. Buy a bunch of like cheap USBs and put your game on it and have some extras. If you're allowed. Again, all of this is based on like, does the venue allow you to sell things? Check with the organizers, because they may not. Or maybe, you know, if you again, that Kickstarter hits and limited run is like, yo, let's put your game in a box. You can do that. Get quotes when you approach manufacturers. Understand, like, get a quote. Understand what their minimum order is. You know, and what their unit price is, like, per piece. And then, or if they're print on demand, like, that can also be nice too. And then again, confirm. Again, this is, you might not be thinking of this as a student, but this is stuff you can think about. I'm convinced that actually making and selling a branded flamethrower would be the best way to get your game attention. I mean, it worked for Spaceballs, the movie. It would be a really good way to get your game attention. Okay, real quick, just to blow through this. Online marketplaces, free to post on Itch, GameJolt, IndieDB, Humble Bundle. Cool. Humble Bundle, like, it's free, but you need approval. And so be careful with Humble Bundle, but like, you could submit your game to be included, and then they'll give you a yay or nay. Costs money to be on Google, App Store, Epic. Its origin's still there. I've never used it. GOG, I'm pretty sure. No, GOG might be free. But they're kind of the same thing where they're like, oh, we don't want to put your game on there. They're kind of trying to build themselves as like a legacy brand. Steam costs money to be on Steam. You know, just know that. Thankfully, you don't have to do Steam Greenlight anymore. Hooray. It sucked. I hated having Steam Greenlight. Steam Greenlight is like having a Kickstarter. It's all the stress of Kickstarter, except there's no end date. So if you have a bad Kickstarter that's not going to make it, it at least ends. Greenlight didn't end until they, for reasons only known to them, decided to approve your game. So who knows? But thankfully, Steam Greenlight is not there anymore. It's just like $100. So, but you know, you need $100. Most require the kind of info that you would find in a press kit. Again, this is why I have you make these. Some require a lot more, like Steam. So it's like every type of icon that will be used in Steam's many, you know, social media function tools. You need to provide those. Having it on a marketplace gives your project legitimacy. It changes it from this homework project I did and never ever, you know, put on your itch page like I did this for class. You know, just say like I made a game. You know, don't give people the ability to assume your game is one thing or another. Just like talk about it like, you know, this is my project. But when you have it up, that's legitimacy versus like it's just this homework assignment I did on my hard drive, you know, something. Social media. Professional identity building. When you have a studio, you should have a studio logo. You should have business cards. This is what the capstone students are currently working on. Try to make some social media accounts. And again, like try to make ones for your studio so that you're not just piggybacking. Like if your social media is fairly straightforward and fine, you can just use your own social media. Like I use my own Twitter to do most of my, I shouldn't, but my own Twitter is the easiest place to promote my stuff because more people see it than my studio Twitter, but I cross promote between all of them a lot. But like, if your Twitter is all the times you've ever been like, well, I'm at a party, like you do when you're in college, maybe think about making a professional social media account. Think about your reason to be. What is your studio's reason to be if you are going to found your own studio or, talk about yourself as a studio? And don't just be like, well, I'm going to make games that I like to play. Because guess what? Everybody does that. Everybody does that. What you want to say is, our studio challenges the distinctions between games and art. Whatever, something. Something that makes you sound different. Marketplaces with audience feedback include Itch, Game Jolt, and Steam. Be careful of Steam. There are Nazis on Steam. I had somebody write to me during a Greenlight campaign once. There was like, hey, we think your game's cool. We'd really like to promote it to our community. Can you like pop on our community and like maybe make a post? And I was like, oh, cool. So I went into their community and like there's a swastika right there. And I'm like, I'm not posting here. So watch it. But Itch and Game Jolt are cool. Social media plan. Schedule your postings. That can save you a lot of time. If you just like say, Monday morning between 9 and 10 is the day where I will just write a bunch of media social media postings, and then I will just use the time your media post feature where it'll be like, and post this one Wednesday at noon. You can do that. But if you do that all in one lump, it's an hour of your time and not you trying to always be putting out social media fire. Fill out a calendar. Again, have a plan. Don't just, and I admit that I'm bad at this, have plan out your social media. Like Friday is Facebook Friday. Twitter Tuesday. I post on Twitter from my studio account on Tuesdays. There you go. Have a plan. And then hashtags to use include like Screenshot Saturday, Indie Dev, Game Dev, Tabletop, whatever applies. That's how like we talked about building an audience. Be communicative. Audiences are not always trying to give you gotchas. Sometimes they are just asking a question, and you'll get you'll get the how is your game different from this other game? Yeah, Godzilla. You'll get how is this game different from another game? They're not trying to get you. They're trying to know. Answer them, and they'll be like, "Wow, a game developer talked to me. That's great. You're building an audience." Be aware of review code scams. If you get an email from Eurogamer, this happened to me last year, and they're like, hey, can you send us a code? And the email doesn't look quite right. Email Eurogamer and be like, yo, is this person with you? And they'll be like, yay or nay, It's not Eurogamer only. It's just like in general. I've seen this happen, so be careful. Sometimes people will try to like scam you out of a code. Don't delete negative feedback. Because that is throwing filet mignon to the trolls. It sucks when you do get somebody just like trolling your page, but don't further feed them. Just like let that sit there, and then it'll probably be replaced with positive things. Afterward, and then have times to like step away. Get have self-care. Like, the internet is awful. Take care of yourself. And that's it. Thank you for staying the 5 minutes over and dealing with the internet outage. Are there any questions? Ask me 2 quick questions, and then we can go our merry way. I'm sure you have lots and lots of questions coming out of this like dump of information. I'm not sure if I missed this earlier, but how long would you suggest a demo be specifically for panels and such? How long should your game demo be? Uh, at least 5 minutes of gameplay. It's gonna depend on your game. If you're doing an RTS, I mean, if you could do a 5 minute RTS, great. But yeah, I mean, assume that people are going to only play for about 5 minutes. And I've actually had this out with people on the flip side, because I've had people be like, "Well, we're holding an arcade event, so we should not accept narrative adventure games," and I'm like, "Get out of here! No, everybody." It's like, no, we're not just doing action games. Like everybody's welcome. But yeah, I mean, if you could get 5 good minutes, great. 5 to 10, you know, high speed RTS sounds. No, that is like as it came out of my mouth, I was like, yeah, no, that's a really cool idea. But don't. I'm going to really what I meant by that is like I'm going to give you a time frame, and then I'm going to equivocate with it a little bit to kind of let you know, like, if you're that's not some sort of like maximum. You want to have at least 5 minutes probably. If like your game can't get 5 minutes of gameplay that looks nice, you shouldn't be showing it publicly yet. If your game can be like a 2-hour adventure, so be it. Some people will stay as long as they want. And if you get a person that stays for like 2 hours playing through your game, that's awesome. Like you've got a fan right there, and that's great. So yeah, that's kind of what I mean by like there's a min, there's not totally a max. And then one more question. These are great. If the person who was on that was like, hey, when's our final? It's like, hey, I apologize for coming down hard. I want you to think deeply. But yes, please. I don't have that information in my brain right now. I did put it on the syllabus. But yes, no hard feelings meant by that. I hope you didn't take it as hard feelings. One more question. Let's do it. I was also wondering if you think posters would be. Oh, absolutely. Posters are great. Do whatever is economical for you to carry, and because like 24 by 36 poster is expensive. 11 by 17 posters are not as expensive. But yeah, posters are great. Posters are good merch. One thing that I didn't put in my slides. They're a little pricey. Again, this is kind of something that if you had like funding, you could do. But one that I've always been fond of is tote bags too. That's another good one, because then if you're at a convention and people are trying to manage all like the postcards they take, if you are the tote bag booth, then you're the hero. So think about that one. Again, they're more expensive. You need funding for that. Yeah, posters are great. Like we have them for Nemo. We're kind of excited about that, and the fans seem to be excited about that. So yeah, posters are good. If you really have a narrative story heavy game but don't want to start at the beginning for demo, what's a good way of balancing showcasing your game with avoiding spoilers? Only so this gets into like. I would actually advise then maybe limiting the demo. Like give the demo a stopping point. So She Dreams Elsewhere does this, where you get the intro dungeon and it gives you the game and then stops on a cliffhanger. And it gets you to be like, ooh, what's next? Oh, I'll have to buy the game or something like that. So I would, in that case, cut the game off. So that, again, like, And that was still like an hour of gameplay for the demo. But yeah, if you have that, then that'll help. That's always a tough one because that's like an extra developer task, but it is worth it if you're presenting a game that would benefit from that. Yeah, cool. If you have any other questions, this is admittedly like one of the big meta, like what does it mean to be a game developer lectures. I am also, I will also take questions in Discord, so feel free to reach out and hit me up. Other than that, I will talk to you later, and thank you for watching. That was the last lecture of the class, so, feel free to ask me questions as we approach that final presentation day. Oh, should you maintain a professional look at your booth, or could you do something like cosplaying your own game's main character? Maybe that's too gimmicky. You could. I don't see a lot of people doing it. I see some people having a cosplay, like a friend who's a cosplayer, be at their booth. Think about it this way. If you're cosplaying your own character, now you're splitting your time between the needs of cosplay and the needs of showing the booth. So I'm not saying don't do it. I've just never seen it done quite that way. My concern with it would be that you I got to take this picture, but I also got to get this person up to speed on my game. So if you're going to have a cosplayer, then maybe have a friend do it. The other thing, too, is I cannot emphasize this enough. Dress comfortably, especially if you have to stand. So, keep that in mind if, cosplay, if the cosplay is kind of... So think about those things from a standpoint of comfort and splitting your attention. That being said, again, I've never seen it, so I don't also have a case study to say that it's totally a bad idea. Cool. All right.